One other question that often comes up is when people, the concept of risk parity equal risk balance, everything we discussed kind of all makes sense, but there are definitely two major ways of implementing risk parity that have been created. The pro-cyclical and the counter-cyclical, right? The pro-cyclical one being that you're creating a risk parity portfolio and you're constantly measuring the volatility of that portfolio and either increasing or decreasing your exposure in order to hit a target. Yeah. And kind of the Bridgewater approach, which is, listen, we expect these relationships, these are structural relationships across these asset classes, and we're going to create weightings based on those structural relationships. How do you think about that problem? What is the way that you guys prefer to implement?
Yeah, we don't assume we can be precise about these things, right? So part of, and I think this goes back to what I just said, which is this objective of trying to be more precise. So a lot of funds, what they do is they try to target a certain volatility, right? And there's maybe too much science in this, where and basically the way it ends up is when market volatility is low, they have more leverage. And when market volatility is high, they have less leverage because they're trying to target a certain volatility, because that's their perspective is that's what risk parity is supposed to do. And the challenge there is you can get whipsawed, and it happens all the time, because oftentimes periods of low volatility are followed by periods of high volatility and vice versa. And if you're trying to fine tune that way, we saw this year, a lot of these funds lost a lot on the downturn, cut their leverage near the lows, and then didn't rebound as much. And our little ETF that isn't very active and it just holds 20% leverage all the time, it was down 4% in Q1 and is up 10% now. And there's nothing fancy about it. There's no trying to fine tune and target volatility. We just know what these relationships are over time, and we just hold it. It's actually very simple.
When I look through the because you guys publish the index, right? It's the Advanced Research Institute Risk Parity Index. Which is great because it provides some ability for analysis and a good sort of illustration of what one might expect in general in terms of the character of a risk parity strategy. But one thing that did stand out as I just did a quick poke around at the index was that it does seem to have a rather high strategic beta to treasury risk, higher than what we observe in some of the other indices. And I'm just wondering, is that strategic? And I mean, like going all the way back, right? So you can look at a rolling basis, or you can look at it on an average basis, but certainly it does have obviously that was very, very helpful in the more recent episode, where having a larger allocation to fixed income obviously was very useful. Yeah. So what are the risks and benefits in your mind to having that larger strategic beta to treasuries?
So I think it's a little misleading. So the exposure there is very similar to the ETF. And the reason there's a difference in market value is because in the index, we're just buying 10-year treasuries, whereas in the ETF, it's 10s and 30s. So that's limitations with the index and having a long track record, because it's back tested to 98. So that's why it's there, but the duration exposure is very similar in the ETF. So it is risk balanced. It's not. It just looks that way because of the allocation. It's just lower. It's a little bit shorter duration than the
ETF. Right. Sure. Okay. Yep. Makes sense.
All right.
Good.
Well, look, we're in an hour and a half almost.
I've only got 5 more questions.
This is fun. You do this every Friday. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for you.
We'll have you back on too.
Talking to people.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we'll definitely have you back on, because I want to know what Mike's 5 questions are.
It's a great thing. I actually have them. I'm just want to save them.
Ask them. You asked them.
I did. Well, that was the first set of 5. I've got
the 5 sets of 5. Right?
The 5 sets of 5. It's the
conversations are usually more contentious too. I mean, we've been racking our brain about how to like poke and prod on a subject that we're all in violent agreement on.
But everybody who's not for the rest of the. Do you guys have another half hour?